The Golden Cage. Late Thursday afternoon in Dallas. The air inside the packed studio off Cedar Springs Road felt electric. 5 chairs arranged on stage, bright lights bearing down, a restless audience half watching, half checking their phones. The panel discussion was supposed to focus on midterm strategy and women in politics. Nothing extraordinary, nothing that would shatter the news cycle within hours. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat in the middle chair, calm and collected. She knew these shows, the constant interruptions, the recycled talking points, the barely disguised egos clashing for airtime. She hadn't planned to create a moment. She just wasn't going to sit quietly while others dance around uncomfortable truths. To her right sat Lincoln Ward, former advisor to 2 Republican governors, his baritone voice cutting through the studio with practiced confidence. At the far end, Susan Laib, a political strategist from Arizona, her composure visibly straining every time Jasmine spoke. The host's question seemed innocuous enough. Do you think political spouses have too much influence or not enough? Lincoln was already halfway through a snide comment about Michelle Obama when Jasmine leaned forward in her seat. The subtle shift in her posture silenced the room. Can I say something? Her voice remained even, measured. The host nodded. I think people underestimate what political marriages cost, Jasmine said. And I'm not talking about influence. I'm talking about sacrifice, pressure, and silence. Lincoln chuckled under his breath. Jasmine didn't flinch. Someone very close to the previous administration once told me, Melania Trump didn't live a life of luxury. She lived a life of surveillance, controlled movements, filtered conversations, smiles on command. You could hear the breath leave the room. Even the host blinked rapidly, unprepared. She's still married to a man who doesn't really see her, Jasmine continued, her voice steady. What we saw on TV, those awkward handholds, those cold glances, that wasn't a fluke. That was daily life. Susan shifted uncomfortably. Wait, are you saying Melania confided in you? No, Jasmine replied, looking straight ahead. I'm saying someone who worked in the White House closely, daily, quietly shared with me things they witnessed, things that made them feel sick. Lincoln sat up straight, color rising in his face. This is reckless. You're just airing out private hearsay. It's not hearsay if it lines up with what millions of women already recognize, Jasmine shot back. Some marriages are prisons, even when they are draped in designer gowns and Secret Service protection. The moderator cut in, desperately trying to redirect the conversation, but it was too late. The camera crew leaned in. Someone backstage waved frantically, whispering, "Mark that timestamp." It wasn't just what Jasmine said, it was how she said it. No gossip, no venom, just quiet certainty that cut through the noise. As the show went to commercial break, the control room erupted. Producers whispering urgently, phones buzzing with notifications. What no one realized was that the clip had already been trimmed, captioned, and uploaded before the show had even returned from break. When the cameras started rolling again, the temperature in the room had changed. The host steered toward safer topics, polling numbers, campaign strategies, border policy. But the damage was done. The smiles were tighter, the pauses longer. Jasmine sat quietly sipping water while Lincoln shifted in his seat like he was sitting on a hornet's nest. I just want to say, Lincoln began, his voice louder than necessary, that dragging someone's marriage into a national discussion without facts is low. This wasn't brave. It was classless. Jasmine met his gaze evenly. You call it dragging. I call it revealing a pattern. A pattern of what? He laughed sharply. You said someone told you something behind the scenes, and suddenly we're diagnosing Melania Trump's marriage like we're on daytime TV. That someone worked in the East Wing for over 2 years, Jasmine replied. They saw things no camera could catch. They watched a woman with no voice, no freedom, and no room to break. And it wasn't about politics. It was about being human. The host raised her hand, trying to calm things down. Let's not get too personal. But that's the point, Jasmine said, turning toward her. It is personal. We spend so much time pretending these people are symbols, but behind those pearls and speeches, there are women holding their breath just to make it through dinner. The room went still. Then a voice from the audience, a woman in the back row. Say that again. Jasmine glanced over. I said, some women hold their breath just to make it through dinner. That was the line. Phones came up. Hands shook as people typed. The moderator scrambled. Let's move on. Let's move on. Lincoln wasn't finished. So you're a mind reader now, he snapped. Do you even know what you started? Jasmine turned to him, composed as ever. Maybe something that needed to start. With a small shrug, she added, and if telling the truth makes people uncomfortable, maybe they should ask themselves why. The producers signaled frantically. The host cut to break a full minute early. By the time Jasmine reached a hotel room that evening, she had become the center of a digital firestorm. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, her email inbox a war zone. It's bad, she asked her aide Moira, more curious than worried. Moira didn't look up from her phone. It's not bad, it's nuclear. Good or bad nuclear? Moira paused, then slowly turned her phone toward her boss. Read this. A woman named Cecilia Martinez from Albuquerque had written, I watched Jasmine Crockett speak, and for the first time in 20 years, I felt seen. I remember sitting through Christmas dinner next to a man who hadn't looked me in the eye in a year. I was dressed up like a doll, smiling like I was fine. I wasn't. Golden Cage. Another comment followed, then another. Hundreds. Thousands. A movement wasn't forming. It had already formed. Talk shows scrambled to book Jasmine. Cable hosts either praise her honesty or accuse her of weaponizing pain for politics. That night, Melania's spokesperson released a toast statement. Mrs. Trump does not comment on baseless gossip. We encourage public figures to act with grace and discretion, not exploit fictional stories for political gain. By morning, conservative anchors were tearing into Jasmine's credibility. Op-eds ran with titles like Crockett crosses a line and respect the office, not the drama. Her congressional office received over 100 calls in 2 days, half furious, half grateful. A protest sign appeared outside her Houston district office. Jasmine apologized. The next morning, another sign appeared right beside it. Tell the truth. Keep talking. The pressure was mounting, exactly as intended. But inside her D.C. apartment, with the lights off, Jasmine sat beside Moira watching her own face loop endlessly on a muted TV screen. You think they'll sue? Jasmine finally asked. They don't want a lawsuit, Moira replied. They want to scare you into silence. Jasmine didn't blink. It's not working. It's not supposed to work right away, Moira said. They just want to shake the foundation enough to make you think twice next time. But Jasmine wasn't alone anymore. That same afternoon, a staffer from a high-ranking senator's office reached out anonymously, a woman asking if Jasmine would talk off the record about something she'd witnessed during a private donor event years earlier. Something involving Melania's discomfort and a subtle but unmistakable argument behind closed doors. She was crying, the woman whispered through the phone, wiping her face while pretending it was her eye makeup. No one helped. Everyone just looked away. Jasmine didn't record the call or press for names. She just listened, because now they were starting to come forward, not loudly, not in front of cameras, but in the way people do when they've kept something buried too long. Meanwhile, according to 2 staffers interviewed anonymously by the Austin Standard, Melania's team was in chaos. One aide wanted her to sue immediately. Another suggested a major interview to clear the air. But Melania refused both options. She's reading everything, one source said. She won't admit it, but she's reading the quotes, the comments, the articles. And she's silent, which makes them nervous. For the first time since Jasmine's revelation, Melania was spotted in public, briefly walking into a Manhattan townhouse, ignoring reporters' questions. No smile, no wave, no denial. Back in D.C., Jasmine met with a communications director. You need to put out something, he insisted. Not defensive, just steady, honest. Jasmine looked out the window for a long time before turning back. Make it simple. That afternoon, her office released a 1-sentence statement. I spoke the truth as it was told to me by someone who lived it, and I stand by it. The wind shifted again. Cable news hosts argued all evening about whether Jasmine was bold or reckless, but the tone had changed. People started asking a different question. What if she's right? But no one, not even Jasmine, expected what happened next. 3 days after the legal threats were issued, Melania Trump made an unannounced appearance at a children's charity luncheon in Tampa. No press release, no media build-up, just a quiet entry through the side door of a modest hotel ballroom. She wore pale blue, her hair tied back, barely a trace of makeup. Reporters weren't supposed to be there, but one local outlet had received a tip. They filmed her arrival from behind a row of tables. Melania sat beside the mayor's wife, smiled politely, spoke little. The camera caught her looking out the window more than once. Toward the end of the luncheon, Melissa Draper, a local counsel and child advocate, stepped to the microphone. "We've been talking all day about lifting children's voices," she said, addressing the room. "But sometimes the ones who are silent aren't children. Sometimes they are women who no longer believe they have the right to speak." Melania's expression didn't change, but everyone around her shifted uneasily. "There's been a lot of noise lately," Melissa continued. "I won't name names, but someone stood up and said something honest, maybe painful, maybe too raw for some. I just want to say, sometimes truth isn't kind, but that doesn't mean it's not truth." She paused, looking directly at Melania. "Mrs. Trump, you've always carried yourself with grace. I hope you know that silence isn't the only option." The room went still. Every eye turned toward Melania. She didn't stand. She didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly picked up the microphone in front of her and spoke 5 words. "Some cages are invisible." Yes. No one breathed. No explanation. No defense. Just that. And somehow it was louder than anything Jasmine had ever said. Later, when reporters scrambled to confirm what they'd heard, Melania's team insisted the comment was taken out of context, that it was merely a general statement. But the footage was already online, spreading faster than wildfire. By nightfall, "Some cages are invisible" was everywhere, on T-shirts, hashtags, headlines. Even people who dismissed Jasmine a week earlier were now rewatching the panel clip with new eyes. She didn't deny it, one popular TikTok user pointed out. She didn't say Jasmine lied. She didn't say anything except, "Yeah, some cages aren't made of bars." On a college campus in St. Paul, students held a vigil with signs bearing the quote. In Phoenix, a local women's group organized a last-minute discussion called "The Power of Saying Nothing." Everywhere, people weren't just reacting, they were connecting. Jasmine watched the clip alone in her apartment, phone on silent, eyes locked on the screen. That voice, that phrase, so quiet but impossible to ignore. Moira knocked and entered with a laptop. "We just got 3 new media requests. CNN, NBC, even the Times wants to sit down." Jasmine didn't look up. "She said it," she whispered. "Yeah." Moira nodded. Not directly, but she said it. They watched the clip again in silence. "Do you think she meant it?" Moira asked. Jasmine thought for a long time before answering. "I think she's tired. I think she's been tired for a long time." "So what now?" Jasmine finally smiled, the kind of small, heavy smile you give when something big has shifted and you know nothing will ever be quite the same. "Now," she said, "we turned this whisper into a conversation." But that conversation was already starting in places no one expected, far from the cameras, where women were finally feeling seen. It began small, a school auditorium in Glendale. 30 chairs, a folding table, lukewarm coffee. The flyer read, "Golden Cage, when silence isn't a choice." The women who showed up weren't politicians or media insiders. They were teachers, nurses, stay-at-home moms, retirees. Some came with friends. Others walked in alone, sat in the back, stayed quiet until the last 5 minutes when the tears started. No one mentioned Melania Trump by name. They didn't have to. One woman talked about her husband controlling their bank account. Another said she hadn't made a personal decision without permission in years. A third just sat there until she finally whispered, "I thought it was just me." In Portland, a college professor turned her sociology lecture into a discussion on public image and private harm. In Birmingham, a pastor rewrote her Sunday sermon to focus on invisible suffering. In Toledo, an 8th-grade girl asked her teacher why someone with so much money would still feel trapped. The phrase stuck, "Some cages are invisible." But what Jasmine Crockett did next took it further. She walked into a legislative committee meeting on Capitol Hill with a fresh draft in her hand, the Public Spousal Wellbeing Act, proposing mandatory mental health and support services for spouses of high-ranking elected officials. It wasn't flashy. It didn't come with campaign buzzwords. It was quiet, practical, intentional. And it landed like thunder. Cable networks scrambled to cover it. Some pundits scoffed. Now we're giving therapy to political spouses, one asked incredulously. But others understood, because behind every powerful face on TV was someone invisible just trying to breathe. A week later, Jasmine held a town hall in Tulsa. No teleprompter, no handlers, just her in a room full of people. "I didn't say what I said for applause," she told them. "I said it because someone told me something in confidence, and it rang too true to ignore. When I said it out loud, I didn't expect a movement. I just wanted the silence to crack." She scanned the room slowly. But look what happened when it did. Applause broke out, not loud, but steady. The kind that builds not just in volume, but in weight. After the event, a woman stopped Jasmine in the hallway. "Your word got my sister to leave," she said. "After 10 years, she packed a bag and called me crying. Said she finally believed someone." Jasmine blinked hard, took a breath. "Thank you for telling me." She wants to thank you. And perhaps that's what the last few weeks had been about. Not scandal, not gossip, but giving someone, somewhere, the permission to stop pretending. Melania Trump never commented again. No follow-up interview, no rebuttal. But she didn't need to. Her silence said more than any press release ever could. The story eventually faded from headlines. That's how these things usually go. But something lingered, not in the news cycle, but in conversations between friends, in support groups, in whispered late-night texts that began with, "I think I'm in one of those cages, too." And Jasmine, she kept going, kept speaking. Not about Melania, not about politics, but about truth. About how appearances lie. About how survival isn't always loud. And about how sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is admit that something behind the smile is breaking. So if you're watching this and it touched something inside you, even something small, don't ignore it. Talk to someone. Ask questions. Tell your truth. And if you're able, speak for those still trapped inside cages no one else can see. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell.